She was going to retire when she was 65. She said, I'm going to retire. Then she said, no, maybe next year. He said, no, maybe next year. He said, no, maybe next year. She said, you know what? I just love the kids.
Saturday, March 7th, 2026, about 9:30 in the evening. One of the surveillance cameras outside a bar in the far south side of Chicago captures two figures in the bar. The first one is a 68-year-old woman named Phyllis Goolsby. The other one is her 25-year-old boyfriend, a retired 75-year-old iron worker, William Wallace Jr. They sit down, they order a drink. It looks normal. It appears to be just like any other Saturday night of a couple that has been together 25 years. However, the next thing the camera captures is as follows. Phyllis gets upset. Wallace has been offered a second drink. She does not desire that he possess it. The drink is something that he changes his mind about, and the two walk out of the bar. Surveillance checks up on them reveal that they leave the bar by 9:45 p.m. That is the final time that Phyllis Goolsby is seen out of her house. The footage does not exist between 9:45 p.m. and 10:50 p.m. No calls, no texts, no digital trail whatsoever. Only 65 minutes between two people leaving a bar and one of them picking up the phone to dial 911. Today, the majority listen to the story and pose the question, what has happened in that bar, and what was the point of the argument? That is the wrong question. The right question is this: what became of the other lady in the house, the one who was not at the bar? The home alone person when these two walked through the front door, the one nobody was thinking about at all. Since the death of Phyllis Goolsby was not the only one that night. Her elder sister, 71-year-old Tuanna Thomas, was also present in that house. She had 3 years with Phyllis and Wallace staying there, and she was shot 3 times, in the back, in her personal bedroom on the first floor. Think about that for a second. 3 bullets, all in the back. That is not an argument that went out of control. That is another thing altogether. And it is the part which makes people lose it. It was not the neighbor who informed the world about what happened, not a witness, not a detective. It was the man who did it. William Wallace Jr. made a call at 10:50 p.m. with the 911 number, and the first thing that he said was no cry of help, not a plea, not a confession in a repentance. And he said, which is got word for word out of the court records, "I have just shot 2 of them." He provided the full name of the 911 operator, his address. He informed them that the victims were sisters. The dispatcher asked him why. He said they got on his nerves. That was it. That was his reason. 25 years of a relationship, a house they shared, 2 ladies who were a couple, and his response was, they were on my nerves. It is the file on Phyllis Goolsby, a woman that devoted her life to teaching 4-year-olds how to read and write, a young lady who had continually returned to work each year since she could not leave the kids who required her services, a woman murdered on a couch in her own living room by the man she loved more than 20 years. This is Last Seen Files, in case you have never been here. We do not sensationalize. We read the file, we take you through the evidence, and thou hast made a choice of what it is. If you are interested in this case, type "I am ready" in the comment right now. Just comment "I am ready." When I see your comment, I will give you a heart. And we have to recreate this night to the beginning. Saturday, March 7th, 2026. Phyllis Goolsby is moving out of the Scholastic Academy, a small school at the Chatham section of South Side Chicago. She's a 4-year-old teacher. It was opened in 2011, and she has been doing it since. The school owner was Raekwon Neighbors, who was the last one to speak to her. On Friday, 6th March 2026, he realized her departure of work. This would be the last time he would see her. One day when she walked out, he knew not. Now, Saturday evening, the house is located on South Peoria Street, 10,400 block in Washington Heights neighborhood. Phyllis lives there.
There is her older sister, Tuanna Thomas, 71 years old, and William Wallace, Jr., 75, the boyfriend of Phyllis, has been staying in their home with the two approximately 3 years. Wallace himself is a retired iron worker. He came out of Alabama to Chicago 50 years ago. No criminal record, 0 prior arrests. It was in the year 2001 when he met up with Phyllis.
Here is the sequence. 9:30 p.m. The couple of Wallace and Phyllis leave their house and walk to a local bar in South Peoria. The prosecutors also allege that Goolsby had his son in the bar. They go inside, they order a drink. It is somewhere within this time that Wallace is offered a second drink by someone. He accepts. Phyllis is agitated about it. Nevertheless, there is a motive why prosecutors have referred to this fact in court. It is important. Not because of the drink, it informs us of the dynamic, and as a consequence of this, we become informed about it. Phyllis objected again on his eating more. Wallace declined the second drink and went back. Then the two of them left. 9:45 p.m. The surveillance cameras are used to demonstrate that Wallace and Goolsby walk out together out of the bar, headed home, 5 minutes or so of walking maybe, and they go home to the house at around 9:50 p.m., at most. Phyllis has an older sister, Tuanna Thomas, that is already inside, 71 years old. The first level also has a personal bedroom. And then, nothing. No calls, no texts, no one among the neighbors had reported any shouting. No 911 hang-ups, nothing. Just an hour. Allow that time to sink into you. 65 minutes. It is even longer than most television shows. It takes a long time as compared to most of the lunch breaks. It is ample time to take a rest, to go to sleep, to be other than literally as he was. And we are not told what happened there in that house, there in that window. Who was the first to be shot is unknown. No one knows whether a conversation had taken place before gun was drawn. It is not mentioned whether there was any screaming. It is uncertain whether Tuanna Thomas had heard anything in her bedroom when it came to her. At 10:50, we can only hear that the two ladies had vanished. And it is what that gap tells you this. He did not even panic and immediately dialed 911 immediately after shooting once. He had not made any call when it was in progress. He waited. He finished what he was doing. He moved through the house. He sat with it. Then, towards the end of it all, when the women were dead and the house was dead, he picked the phone, not to call for help, to report what he had done. 10:50 p.m. William Wallace, Jr. places a 911 call to the house. We shall now go to the pace of things a bit, as the 911 call is the very center of this entire case, and not a single word of it will be uttered without an influence. He identifies himself immediately, full name, full address. He does not hesitate. He does not sound panicked. He does not narrate that he broke in or got an accident. He tells the operator in his own words that he had just shot down two of them. The 911 operator asks who he shot. He says they are sisters. The operator asks why. And this is what he says, pulled straight out of the court proffer. They got on my nerves. He does not hang up. He stays on the line. The officers pick up the thread at this point. Approximately 10:55 to 11 p.m., the occupants of the South Peoria Street home are taken to the Chicago Police Department officers. They are responding to an act of multiple people being shot. On going in, the front door is opened by Wallace himself. He says the gun is upstairs. Officers enter the home. On the first floor, they walk into a bedroom. They find an item of 71-year-old Tuanna Thomas lying in the inside on the ground. She has 3 gunshot wounds. All 3 are in her back. The ground of the room has 5 shell casings. 5 casings, 3 wounds in the back. 2 points at least broken away. What she could have been attempting to do is to move, trying to get away, and he kept firing. Officers move upstairs.
They find Phyllis sitting in a couch in an upstairs living room. Her wounds include 2 gunshots on her upper left chest and a wound on her right index finger. The grounds near the couch have 3 shell casings. There is a coffee table with a gun lying next. Look how sore in her finger. The latter is known as a defensive wound. She saw it coming. She raised her hand. She tried to stop it. After 25 years with this man, after making love, life, a kitchen, its body was trying to rescue her, even in the few seconds when she was dying, against the man she trusted the most. This was a gun that was on the coffee table, not hidden, not wiped down, not disposed of, and simply sitting there like he had dropped the remote control when you turn off the television.
This is that fact that prosecutors made sure to state. There were no signs of struggle or blood in the rest of the house, as officers discovered. Not in the hallway, not on the stairs, not on the walls. The evidence was the 2 rooms that contained violence, one on the first floor, one on the second. That he was transferred to one room to another. He had shot one woman, and the man had then gone to the house where he shot the second woman. It was not among such outbursts of anger. This was a sequence, room by room. This is the point that the majority of people forget about. Tuanna Thomas had been shot in the back, in her bedroom. She had nothing to do with whatever happened with the bar. She was not in the argument. She was just home. She also apparently irritated him. Quick passing of the name of our subscriber of yesterday, TruthWatcher88. You opened the file. You stayed. You do not know what the value of that is. There is always an interrogation now in such a case. The suspect is put on the ground by the police. They build rapport. They let the suspect talk. They introduce evidence bit by bit. They wait for the cracks. This was not a case when it was necessary. William Wallace Jr. confessed to the officers even before they passed over the front door. He confessed on the 911 call. He confessed and opened the door. He confessed when he threw them towards the gun. But then he kept going. When the case was being dealt with, one of the officers who were handling the case thanked Wallace to be patient in the process at the time of the arrest, one of those common everyday things that policemen say. And Wallace returned some in response, which prosecutors would read aloud in a courtroom. "I am not short of no damn patience," I said. "My name is Alma God, and age 75, and I am so impatient. This is what has happened this evening. I have no patience. My patience is gone." Read that again. He is not expressing guilt. He is not expressing regret. He is giving an explanation. And it is because he is a teddy and he is not patient, and that is why 2 women are dead. He is framing it in a manner that it was a necessity. Patience is a process, and he just had his end. But he was not done. The sound and video delivered in the surveillance police station permitted Wallace to make calls on the phone. He had recorded 2 varied voicemails to 2 other family members. In both the voicemails, the prosecutors alleged that he admitted to killing both Phyllis Goolsby and Tuanna Thomas. He told them he was in jail. So, tally the confessions, and we will. Confession number 1, the 911 call. He sent a reply to the dispatcher stating that he shot them and his name and address and his purpose. Confession number 2, he told the officers who had entered the front door that he killed the women and the gun was up the stairs. Confession number 3, his audio and video quote patience at police station. 4th and 5th confessions, 2 separate voicemails with 2 separate family members. The voicemails were recorded and they both admitted to the murders. 5 separate admissions, all unprompted, all voluntary, all on record. The detectives had no need to break him. He was never trying to get away with it. His not trying to get away with it was not an endeavor. He was not trying to play act or to make an extenuating circumstance. He killed 2 women, and he even called the police, 911, opened the door to the officers, and informed them about what exactly he did, and left the voicemails about the same.
There is no calculation here, no cunning, just cold finality, as though he had decided that this was to be the end of that night before they even returned to that house. Now, at the hearing of his detention, the defense tried to fight against time. An assistant public defender who was his attorney said that Wallace had no criminal past. He was an old, retired iron worker who had been 55 years of his life in Chicago. The background information on what led to the shooting has not been given by prosecutors adequately. But here's the thing. The judge was not buying it. The judge in Cook County termed the case as brazen, unprovoked, and senseless. 3 words, each one earned. Brazen, as he had called 911 and announced it. Unprovoked, since a second drink in a bar is not provocation. Ironical, since an elderly woman of 71 years old was shot in the back in her own bedroom, the reason behind which nobody managed to justify. Wallace was put under arrest. He is set to be returned to court on March 25, 2026. And this is where the comment sections cannot release. It is not the crime itself. Cases such as this have been witnessed. It is the tone, the manner through which he discussed it. In all his 5 separate admissions, he never uttered a word of remorse. He did not once say that he was sorry. He never once inquired of the women he shot. There was not a moment when he appeared to realize that he was doing something wrong. He talked about patience. He talked about his nerves. He discussed it concerning his age of 75 years. He never talked about them. Should anything have struck you wrong about this, you are not alone in hearing. The majority of those who subscribe to this case continue to lead themselves back in the thought. It was not just what he did, it was the small amount of how it appeared not to bother him later. It is a word which people repeat in the comment of each article concerning this story, and that word is not angry, it is not confused, it is cold. In case that is the word that came to your mind, write cold in the comments. I would like to know the number of you who shared the same sentiment. Phyllis Goolsby was who, now, I must tell you about, since the facts of her death should not cancel the facts of her life. Phyllis Goolsby was 68 years old. She worked as a head teacher at the Scholastic Academy at the small school located in the Chatham area of the south side of Chicago. She taught 4-year-olds. Since the opening of the doors in 2011, she had been doing it. When the idea to open the school first occurred, the founder of the school was called by Raekwon Neighbors. He told me that as soon as he told her about it, she said, "I am ready," and came in full force. She was supposed to retire at 65. That was the plan. However, 65 came and she said, maybe next year. Then 66 came, maybe next year again. Then 67. Same thing. She kept pushing it back, not because she had to. She was not in a position to leave the kids. That is worth pausing on, since the majority of them, by the time they reach the retirement age, are counting days. They have plans. They have a list. They are ready to be done. The reverse was true of Phyllis Goolsby. She had every reason to stop. She had deserved the right to rest. However, each and every year, she decided on the kids when it was time to make such a decision, again and again and again. 2 of her former students visited the school a couple of weeks before she died, and now they were 8 and 13 years old, children she had taught when small enough to be able to hold a crayon. As they stepped into the door, Phyllis had a breakdown. She simply cried and embraced them. That is who she was. Such a personality is what remains in the mind of the child, even after they have gone. And that is the person who was sitting on that couch when the man that she loved 25 years pulled the trigger. Raekwon Neighbors told Hall that Phyllis was an aunt rather than an employee. He told me she said that he was her favorite, he said, and that he was. After that, they discovered how she had told all the building the same sort of thing. His mom, his wife, all individuals that worked there. "You are my favorite." She said it to all of them. And you know what? That is not a flaw. That is a gift. She ensured that each and every person she was concerned about made them feel as the most significant in the room. How many people can do that? And he had the picture of her at the 68th birthday right beside his keyboard in the workplace. One day she saw it and could not think that he kept it. "You are my favorite too, Miss Goolsby," he told her. It was on the Friday before the shooting when he last saw her. She went out of work just like any other day, and he did not even know that it was the last time. And Tuanna Thomas there is, 71 years old, Phyllis's older sister. She was staying at the house, in her room on the first floor. She had her own space. She was part of the household. She had no share in whatever occurred in that bar. She was home, in her room, whatever a 71-year-old woman does out on a Saturday night in her bedroom. Perhaps she was sitting in front of television. Maybe she was reading. Maybe she was already asleep. And she was shot 3 times at the back.
Not in the chest, not face to face, in the back. She was not turned out of him. It is possible that she was attempting to reach the door. She can have been attempting to flee. She perhaps had not even quite been able to realize what was being done till too late. What we do know, though, is that she was not facing the man who killed her. And that matters, since the defense lawyer told the court that the prosecutors had failed to give sufficient context of what led to the shooting. However, what do you require to set the scene of a 71-year-old woman being shot 3 times in the back in her own bedroom by a man she was not even arguing with? And that does not make sense in any context. The fact that one is forced to walk into the bedroom of the other person and shoot them in the back is not a reason to do so. The funeral of Phyllis and Tuanna is scheduled on 3rd and 4th April. The former parents and former students nationwide are planning to come to Chicago and pay their tributes. That tells you something. When you find individuals that you met 15 years ago making airline reservations in order to see you off, you are doing something right. 4-year-olds that have grown into teenagers still know your name, still know how you made them feel safe. Then you were more than a teacher. You were a foundation. And one took that away out of them, over a drink at a bar. Now, I would like you to sit somewhere with something. 25 years. That is the period that Phyllis Goolsby and William Wallace Jr. were together. A quarter of a century. They had known each other more than most marriages. 3 years together had they lived in one place. Her sister was also under the same roof. They were a household. And the catalyst to all facts on record was a bickering at a bar. About a drink. One drink. This is what the evidence really indicates. The drink was not the trigger. The drink was the excuse. Since you do not walk home after a little dispute, stroll through a home, shoot 2 females in 2 different rooms, dial 911 without a trace of emotion, open the front door to the police, and consequently leave voicemails to your family, or something was already agreed upon inside your head prior to stepping through that door. This was no man who was out of control. It was a man who voted that he was over. And that is what leaves people staying up. Since by the time the danger can live in your house 25 years and not give any red flags, there is a criminal record, no record of violence, no history of violence, then how are you expected to see it coming? The response, and this is something that people do not want to hear, is that sometimes you are not meant to see it coming. The closest person to you is sometimes the one that you would least expect it. That is the reason why they are the most dangerous. It was a Monday morning, the 10th of March, and the children at the Scholastic Academy under Raekwon's appeared at school, and the one who should have welcomed them at the door, the one who had been welcoming them at the door nearly 15 years, was nowhere, and that she would never see her again. Just imagine that you were 4 years old and cannot comprehend why your teacher has disappeared. Think about how it is the one who has to explain it to them.
Think about it as Raekwon neighbors inside that building, gazing at the photo he's pinned to his keyboard to realize that the woman in that photo is not going to be coming back through his door. Friday, he said, was the last time he had spoken to her when she left from work, and he had not known that that was the last time he was going to see her. Nobody ever does. This file is open. It remains open until a verdict has been reached. Did somebody ever change overnight? Does anybody ever look back on a relationship and recognize that there were warning indicators all along? You just did not want to notice them? Tell us in the comments. Not because it is easy to speak about. Someone reading those remarks may require hearing its words. And in case this case is something you feel that you did not think you would feel, type File Open, since this is merely the start. Last seen files. The final word is never the word of God. Close file.